So home wildfire risk assessments have been a free service that our state provides in conjunction with our partners, the Forest Service, the BLM, our local counties, fire departments, our tribal partners. And these assessments provide homeowners anywhere in the state with an assessment of their wildfire risk and how to reduce that risk. The issue was that there has never been a standardized training that actually has provided the process guidance and information. That is until now. When I first started my position in doing home assessments, I tried to shadow as many people as I could to get an idea of how things were done here in Montana. And I witnessed a lot of different data forms. I witnessed a lot of different perspectives and ways that people did the assessments, and a lot of different resources that were being handed out to homeowners, or some assessments where there weren't any resources handed out to homeowners. And so this training was developed so that we can provide in Montana, hopefully, a more consistent process guidance, helping all of our assessors be armed with the same information, the same knowledge of how a home assessment should be organized and structured and what all it should cover. And so that honestly, our homeowners can receive the same quality assessment, whether they live in Missoula or Havre. So that is the goal. That's the need for why we have done this standardized training. The goal for today's accelerated training really is to introduce everybody to our module 1 and 2 of this standardized training, which will cover home assessments, HIZ or home ignition zone, and homeowner engagement, as well as go over our newly revised data collection form. We are going to be doing this at an accelerated pace. So a lot of the information that's provided, if you're new to assessments, there will be a more formal, in-depth training on this, covering the exact same stuff, but in much greater detail in the spring. So realize this is not your one and only opportunity to get this information. You will also be provided after today the PowerPoint for Module 4, which will cover Situation Analyst Montana, which is our database for the assessment data, as well as a video tutorial. So you'll be given that information as well. Module 3 is the field training portion of our standardized training. That will be held this spring. My successor, the new community preparedness and fire prevention specialist, along with Olivia and Ella, will be providing that this spring, in addition to a deeper dive into module 1, 2, and 4. So look for the full training to be provided this spring, and definitely reach out to either Ella or Olivia or Julia if you are interested and haven't heard anything for a little bit. So let them know that you would like to attend or have anybody that you want attending. Our hope really is, as I kind of mentioned before, that this training will guide assessors to the science, the consistent terminology and information and process for home assessments in Montana. And whether you've been doing this training or assessments for years, or you're new to the idea of home assessments, don't worry, this training is definitely for you. It will cover a lot of basic information, but as I have noticed, the science actually has changed a bit in the 15 years or so that home assessments have become a service that many agencies have provided. And so if you have been doing these assessments for a long time, it is worth your while to pay attention, just in case some of that science is actually new to what you have learned. And so I encourage everybody, no matter your experience level, to stick along with us for the next 2 hours. And hopefully everybody comes away armed with something new. So, okay. Any questions on what I've said so far before we head into our module 1? I do not hear anything. Okay. Bear with me. We got to share. We have multiple things. Let's see. All right. Okay. Can I just get a verbal confirmation that you are seeing wildfire risk assessments module 1 slide?
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you. Bill is sitting here in the room with us, and he gave me confirmation, but doesn't understand it doesn't count. So, okay. So, module 1 covers our wildfire risk assessment process. The objectives are for us to come away knowing why we do wildfire risk assessments, understanding what a home wildfire risk assessment is, and knowing how to conduct a home wildfire risk assessment. This is going to cover the basic structure. It's not going to be as in depth as a full assessing structure ignition protection course, but you will at least know the basic structure. So why do we do wildfire risk assessments? Well, homes are fuel. We have our basic fire triangle here: oxygen, heat, and fuel. And when we have homes, especially in close proximity to our wildlands, they are at risk from wildfire. And we conduct assessments to determine what that risk is and to help homeowners understand best how to reduce that risk. But why do we really do wildfire risk assessments? What is our ultimate goal? So go ahead, pitch in. What's our ultimate goal? What do we want to happen?
Education.
You want to
Education. Okay.
communicate to the homeowner what condition their home is in regards to wildfire risk.
Right. Is that our endpoint? We just want to educate and leave, and yes, we've done our job. Is that going to make a change?
I think we want to empower the individual homeowner who's responsible for their wildfire risk to take steps to lower that risk.
You bet. Our goal is to, oh, hold on. It is not, there we go. There we go. Thank you, CJ, you got it. Our goal is to inspire mitigation action
Inspire.
in the home ignition zone. We're providing that education. It's critical, right? You've got to provide that awareness and that education in order to inspire. But if we just provide the education and leave it at that, nothing's going to change. We really want to do all that we can to inspire action, because without action, homes will be lost, lives will be lost, and we won't be creating our fire adapted communities. So as we do our assessments, our goal should really be to help the homeowners see that they can make a difference in their home's survivability, that small steps can lead to big results, right? Cleaning the gutter could save their home. So our ultimate goal is really that to inspire that action. as we are working with our homeowners, our first step is for us to understand how homes burn down and then also to be able to relay that to our homeowners. As most of you, I'm sure, are aware, homes burn down in a number of ways, right? We have direct flame contact. We can have radiant heat, that transfer of heat through waves or rays, and most importantly, embers. Ember ignition is the most common source of home ignition. 90% of homes that are lost or damaged from a wildfire are due to embers. And this is really critical to understand and to relay to the homeowner because it definitely changes your perspective and hopefully their perspective on where their risk is coming from and where their vulnerabilities may lay. Embers are small or large firebrands. They're pieces of burning material, pine cones, pine needles, sticks, leaves that are transported by wind ahead of or to the site of wildfire. They can land or potentially accumulate and start spot fires or land directly on the home itself and start ignition there.
Hey, Kristen,
Yes.
they're only seeing the presenter view of the presentation right now. So it's the all the black
Oh,
presenter background as well.
oh, but that's with the notes? Hang on,
The
sorry.
notes as
Okay, hold on. I'm gonna stop sharing and reshare, right?
Yep.
Sorry, somehow,
And go here,
was that the whole time or was that just?
think the whole time,
well.
and then go ahead and
I
share
just
this.
saw it now, and then Anna Bateson put it in the chat.
You ask them.
There we go.
Okay,
That looks good now, yeah.
are you seeing regular now? Okay, my
Yes.
apologies. Okay, well, you guys got to see all my notes too, so.
Read a lot.
Apologies, operator error. Okay. So embers can travel 1 mile or more from the main wildfire, and it's been documented that they have flown 5 miles or more. So we do know it's a little more extensive than just that 1 mile, but the 1 mile is the guaranteed amount that we can say that science backs us up. But those embers can travel pretty far from that wildfire, and they are constantly burning fuels, creating those spot fires, which then ignite, and they themselves are creating more embers, which are igniting further items. Okay. All right, so now we are headed to our first video, and hopefully this will work. We had some issues before.
Years, my colleagues and I have done research involving laboratory experiments, field experiments, and post-fire
That's where
disaster
that picture comes
assessment
from.
to quantify and qualify the relationship between a wildfire and a destroyed home. What we found is that the high-intensity flames, more than 100 feet away from the house, are largely incapable of igniting the house directly. It's the little things that seem to be destroying the houses. The burning embers, we call them firebrands, wafted out of the high intensity wildfire to land in the community, sometimes directly on houses as well as the surrounding. It's not 100-foot flame. It's a pile of firebrands that would fit in the palm of our hand. So my colleagues and I designed a firebrand, an ember shower demonstration. We have a full-size house. It's got bark mulch and pine needles around the base. It's got pine needles in the rain gutter. It's got pine needles on the roof. We have an ember generator that then casts a brand blizzard at this house. in order for those firebrands to be effective in igniting the house, they either have to ignite the house directly, or they have to ignite something around the house that then can spread to the house.
Okay, hoping that everybody was able to hear that video. So Jack Cohen and other fire scientists, their research found that conditions of the home and the 100 to 200 feet surrounding that structure actually are what determine a structure's survivability. And they've coined this term, or this area, the home ignition zone. We also call it the HIZ. So this HIZ is actually comprised of multiple inner zones as well, each that have differing objectives and strategies to reduce ignition potential. And each of these zones and their distances have been developed through research analysis and experimentation. So we have our immediate zone, which is actually the home and the 5 feet immediately surrounding it. We have the intermediate zone, which is the 5 to 30 foot area around your structure. And then we have our extended zone, which covers the 30 to 100 or 200 feet surrounding your structure. The difference between whether it's 100 or 200 feet is actually slope dependent. If you have a slope of greater than 30% that your structure is on or near, then your HIZ should extend out to 200 feet. So that's the difference there. Now, many of us who have been in the business of prevention or preparedness for a while use the term defensible space. And it is still a term that we can use, but it is actually something that we need to reframe just a little bit, especially as we're talking with homeowners. A big push has been, especially with the increase in wildland urban catastrophes, such as we're seeing right now in LA, in Southern California, is that there is not one engine for every home in our hills, right? We know that there is a likelihood that not every home is going to be saved. Not every home is going to have a firefighter sitting out front being able to defend it. And the old terminology of defensible space was really create that area where fire severity can be a little low, a little less, so that our firefighters have a chance of defending our home. Well, we know that there is a likelihood that there might not be a firefighter there. We have incredible firefighting resources, especially in the state of Montana, but we don't have enough to cover all of the homes in our hills. So we are reframing this defensible space to turn to more think of it as providing that space, providing that mitigation to allow our home and property to be able to defend itself. So as you're using, or if you're used to using that term, reframe it and discuss it as that with the homeowner. For the zones, the immediate zone, intermediate zone, and extended zone, there are numerous other terminologies for these zones. The home ignition zone is pretty standard across science, but the terminology for the specific subzones can be different. There is zone 1, 2, and 3, or zone 1A and 1B. The key is they all cover the same strategies for each zone. But here in Montana, we are asking for assessors to use the NFPA, the National Fire Protection Association's FireWise terminology, which is the immediate zone, intermediate zone, and extended zone. This is more intuitive for our homeowners to understand, and it is also the predominant terminology used in the publications that we predominantly hand out to our homeowners. So as you're doing assessments, try to use this terminology. That way we are all speaking the same language to our homeowners. A well-maintained HIZ reduces the susceptibility of a home to embers or small spot fires or surface fires. The picture on the right is what we are hoping for. As I mentioned briefly before, we are seeing a tremendous increase in our wildland urban disasters. These happen when we have numerous homes and businesses destroyed during extreme wildfire conditions. The key to remember, as Jack Cohen said, was that the wildland urban interface fire problem, it's a home ignition problem. It's not a wildfire control problem. We have awesome firefighting resources, and we do an incredible job at controlling and suppressing our fires. On average, we suppress 98 to 99% of wildfires. The problem is those remaining 1 to 2%. Those are when wildland urban disasters occur. We have severe fire conditions, right? Hot, dry, windy conditions. And these lead to wildland urban fire disasters because those are the days that we can't suppress that fire. Fire spreads. If a fire start occurs, that fire spreads, and it spreads quickly, and it grows rapidly, often at high intensity. And when these types of fires hit a community, they ignite homes and spread quickly between homes. You start having that home-to-home ignition, right? And that leads to our disaster. We have that here in Montana. It can and has happened. 1,500 homes, nearly 1,500 homes, have been lost since 2006. We've had our Doll Fire, 223 homes back in 2012. The Bridger Hills Fire, we lost 68. Close to home here, we have the Roaring Lion Fire, which burned down 65. And just recently, the River Road East, where we lost 64. There is no place you can build in Montana and not have wildfire risk. This map is from the Montana Wildfire Risk Assessment, and it depicts the risk to a home from wildfire if a home were to be built anywhere in Montana on that map. So there is risk. Montana has a high risk of wildfire, higher than 74% of states in the US. Believe it or not, this number has actually gone down. This graphic and data is from the Wildfire Risk to Communities website, which is along with the Montana Wildfire Risk Assessment. Those are two great sources for spatial risk data and information. Great to relay to homeowners if they want more information on this. Now, really close to home here, Ravalli County has a very high risk of wildfire, higher than 99% of counties in the US. So we have the risk. How do we save homes? How do we interrupt this cycle? The key to preventing wildland urban disasters is making sure that most homes in a community will not ignite. Increasing ignition resistance or decreasing ignition potential, same thing, is our goal, right? We can't change our weather. We can't change our topography. We can change our fuels, but not enough in severe fire conditions. And when a fire starts, the only way to stop this cycle is for homes not to ignite, right? So that is the goal of our assessment. We are trying to prevent this. Now, know as you look at this picture, it's telling us multiple things actually, right? We're looking at our primary risk factors because we're trying to prevent this. So we're looking at, okay, what is the risk? What caused these homes? Well, this photo tells us exactly what the main risk was here. What was it? What burned these homes down? What caused those fires? Embers. We have green fuels. We have green trees with foliage in amongst burnt down homes. We cannot prevent homes from burning down with just fuels treatments. We really need to make sure that those homes are hardened or resistant to embers and fire as well. Remember, 90% of home loss in a wildfire is due to embers. So as we are doing these assessments, we are keeping in mind our primary risk. Biggest vulnerability is to embers. So that is where we're concentrating. We're also looking at risk from direct fire and radiant, but we are really concentrating on that ember risk. So risk can be broken down into many components, right? We have the chance of a wildfire occurring, that probability. We've got intensity of a wildfire. We've got exposure of our assets and resources, and we have the susceptibility of those assets and resources to wildfire. Our home assessments are trying to address the susceptibility part. This helps homeowners understand how they can reduce the vulnerability of their home to burning in a wildfire, right? We want to inspire action to increase this ignition susceptibility. So we've learned about why we do home assessments. It doesn't, hang on, sorry, we're trying to get rid of some visual issues in here. Thank you. Julia's saving my bacon. Okay, so we have covered why, the importance, why do we do our home assessments? So now we want to cover what is a home wildfire risk assessment. As CJ mentioned before, and Bill also, it's that evaluation of the ignition potential of a home ignition zone, but it's also providing recommendations for reducing that potential, right? We're giving them an action plan because the ultimate goal is for the assessment to result in mitigation action. There we go. CJ, you're famous again.
Look at that, Ann.
So our wildfire risk assessment process, homeowners can request assessments numerous ways, two of which are via our mtfireinfo.org website, as well as our DNRC's preparedness website. If they do request them online, that notification comes through the DNRC, and then our DNRC staff in the relevant area reach out to partners and work to schedule and take care of that assessment. We also have many events where our partners or ourselves will collect requests for home assessments, or we do targeted pushes, but often our fire stations also will get calls in for requests. But however it is handled, that local point of contact for an area will then schedule an assessment, and the goal really should be for this to be a team effort within a local area. Having more than one agency or entity doing these is great. 4 eyes is so much better than 2, and especially coming from different agencies to show the partnership that this is, right? Mitigation, it's a shared responsibility. So an assessment is a great way to help our homeowners understand and see that. But within SWLO, my successor will cover a lot of the coordination, as well as Olivia will be covering the area in her unit area, and Ella the same down in Ravalli County. But however you do it in your local area, if you are unaware of a setup system for doing assessments, reach out to Julia Berkey or my successor whenever they are in place. Let them know you're interested in being a part of that, so that maybe a new structure can get into place, and a better team effort can be employed where you are. So once the assessment is scheduled, it usually takes about an hour to an hour and a half. What is really critical is when scheduling the assessment, make sure the homeowner understands that the expectation is for them to be there with the assessment. You want to go around and do the assessment with the homeowner. The whole goal, right, is to inspire that mitigation action. And that is only going to occur if you are looking them in the eyes and you are having a two-way conversation with them. Once that assessment is completed, that data is collected, or the data that is collected is then entered into our wildfire risk assessment database, which is called SAM, or Situation Analyst Montana. SAM produces a risk rating based on the data you put in, as well as reports that you will deliver to the homeowner. And what is critical, the critical deliverables that come out of this assessment are that risk rating for the homeowner, as well as those reports, in addition to the written recommendations that you covered with that homeowner. So you want to make sure to follow up after that assessment with those reports and the written recommendations that you had provided to that homeowner during the assessment. That's the action plan. The assessment is divided up into essentially 4 parts. The first part, the preliminary assessment, is something that we can do or initiate before our tires even hit the road. We want to look at access, ingress, and egress, slope and structure position on slope, topographic features and weather patterns, and fuels within the community. A lot of this we can get an idea of by just going and visiting SAM or Google Earth and looking at the location of the home, seeing what's around there, seeing property ownership around them. So doing a visual before you get there is a great way to start the preliminary rapid assessment. When you are driving to the assessment, you want to make sure to verify that the address is visible from the road. You want to check out and note the road condition, grade, and width. You want to look at bridges and gates, the presence of such, if they're locked or not. Driveway length and turnaround, okay? All of these are elements of risk. One thing that's key to note is that SAM, our database, it is currently not accessed by the public, but it can be accessed by our first responders. And we encourage our first responders to make sure to have a profile and access this, because a lot of the information that we collect and enter into SAM is specifically geared towards our first responders, right? Can they adequately access this home? Because it is an element of wildfire risk. We don't want to rely on our first responders to defend every home, because we know they can't. It's impossible. But the ability to be able to do so does decrease risk. I have done an assessment on a home in the middle of July that required 4-wheel drive to get up to the top, and I had to do in my truck a 6-point turn to get back out, right? We're not sending an engine up to that. And so this is critical to risk. There is no engine that is going to go to that house and be able to defend it safely. So these are all really important factors to note and to relay to the homeowner.
We've got a question in the
Yeah.
chat. From Amanda, do you want to just ask that question?
Yeah, sure. I think that's really neat, that you have the ability to make those assessments accessible. I know that's something that our county has been interested in. We had done an old paper version of this exercise a long time ago and have been struggling with a way to kind of have more information for our responders. So I know our fire warden specifically would be interested. How can they connect with you to log into these reports?
Yes, and that's an excellent question. We do go over it in the future, but I'll address it right now because it's pertinent. So anybody affiliated with any agency, right? Fire department, fire wardens, especially county governments, any first responder can access it by gaining a profile. And when you're emailed the module 4, which is SAM, it does a step-by-step on how to access.
Lost audio.
We lost audio on you, Kristen. It cut out right after you were saying that you'll send out the module 4.
I had to get my mouse there.
Oh.
Oh, sorry.
There you are.
So, yeah,
So weird.
our owl might have a mind of its own. Behave, owl. Sorry. Okay, so if you go to samontana.org, there is a tab that says request a account or profile. I can't remember exactly what it says, but click there and it will take you through the steps of setting up a profile. Alternatively, you can also send an email to Julia or whoever your local DNRC contact would be. So Amanda, I would probably send it to Julia for you since I am no longer in place. But yeah, any agency individual can have access to this.
Exciting.
And hold on, we're trying to get back. Okay. Can everybody see the slope and structure position on slope slide? Okay. So we're also looking at, as we're driving in or via our Peak and SAM, how steep the slope is, where the structure is located, what the aspect is, what the location of our home is. We're also going to look at those topographic features that are close by. Is it in a canyon? Is it on a ridge line? Or are there steep slopes everywhere surrounding this home? Is it in a hole? And we also want to consider our prevailing weather patterns. All of these have influences and impacts regarding our fire behavior. And we want to relay these risks to the homeowner. We're also looking at fuels within the community, right? How is the neighborhood looking? Do they have homes close by? Is home-to-home ignition going to be a potential risk? Is a nearby homeowner, is their property within the HIZ of the homeowner's property that you're assessing? If so, that's a risk. That's sometimes an uncontrollable risk, but it's something you want to relay to that homeowner.
Very loud.
Very loudly, yes. All right, we're not actually going to do this activity, but this is a great reminder to be prepared, understand the ecosystem types that you have in your area and know the fire regime, right? Both historic, what you used to have, and maybe what is there now. We all understand that most of our fuel types have changed pretty drastically, as we can see here in our famous Bitterroot photo series. On our left, we have what the ponderosa pine.
Have those been treated since?
Yeah, because it's 1989. So it is different now. It actually looks a lot better now. But between 1909 and 1989, this is what it looked like. Pretty big difference there. And in many of our places, we have a number of different forest types, often different now than what they were 100 years ago. And what's really critical to those fuel types are the fire regimes that come along with them, right? Historically, Ravalli County, lower elevations, we have our ponderosa pine forests, low to moderate severity surface fires every 6 to 13 years. But since fire exclusion, our stands there have become denser and more dominated by Doug fir. Many places throughout Montana have experienced similar changes where we've seen increased homogeneity across the landscape, increased density, and an increased prevalence of fire intolerant and shade tolerant species. This changes our fire regimes. And most of the time now we have a fire regime that is high severity, stand replacing. Fire exclusion has created more continuous forests, which has increased definitely the severity of our fire. Bill, do you agree? Did I do okay?
I agree.
Okay, Bill concurs. We're all good. The Bill I'm talking about is Bill Burdick, our service forester from the Missoula unit. So when we come to our assessment, right? We've done this preliminary assessment. We've driven up. Now we are with the homeowner. You want to make sure to discuss all of those factors that we were talking about to give them the context of the risk that they're sitting in from the setting that their structure is sitting in. Now we are going to move to assessing the actual home ignition zone. So we're going to look at the home and then the 100 to 200 feet surrounding that home. We're going to skip the break. We're going to get a break in just a little bit, I promise. Sorry, Bill's bummed. He's going to leave anyways. So as we do this assessment, we can approach this from many different perspectives. And as I mentioned before, I saw lots of different perspectives from the people that I shadowed doing these assessments. And there isn't really a wrong way to do it, but there might be a better way, because as we mentioned before, if you go in from the perspective of firefighters, from the perspective of this is defendable, you might be doing the homeowner a bit of a disservice. Okay. If you go in with the perspective of how can this structure survive on its own? How can it defend itself and stand with no firefighter intervention? And you're providing guidance with that perspective, you might be setting that homeowner up for more success. Okay, so I encourage you to reframe if your tendency is to look at it from that structure triage viewpoint of, yeah, I can defend it, it's good to go. Instead of that, thinking of it as, okay, how can this home survive on its own? It doesn't mean you need to throw out your experience as a firefighter, because that is incredibly valuable. But shifting how you approach looking at the home will help, because you'll find that you begin to look at all the vulnerabilities that home has. When I do an assessment I look at it as I have that responsibility to show the homeowner every single vulnerability that I see. I want to provide them with the maximum amount of information that I can. It is their choice to do with that information what they want. But I would feel horrible if the doormat that I saw and thought, yeah, that would probably burn if an ember landed on it, but I didn't say anything to the homeowner. I would feel awful if it was that doormat that caused that home to burn. So I think about that every time I do an assessment, and I choose to look at it as let's provide information on every vulnerability. Remember, we're trying to get to a point where houses don't burn and suppression resources aren't overwhelmed. And the only way we can do that is by giving the homeowners as much information as possible so that they can make well-educated decisions and hopefully be inspired to do some action. When you are beginning your actual assessment, you start at the home and you move out. The immediate zone, which is the home and the surrounding 5 feet around it, is the absolute most critical area for reducing wildfire risk. So recognize too that as you're providing recommendations, you are prioritizing. Any recommendation that is in this zone should be at the top of the list. We are looking at home hardening principles. What are the areas of vulnerability to both direct fire and ember ignition here? Okay. All right, we have video number 2. Cross your fingers.
So from start to finish, we're going to start with our ember generators, which we use to recreate a realistic ember exposure. Embers are those small burning and smoldering particles that may travel ahead of the fire front. And what we do with our generators is we create the realistic exposure, and in our wind tunnel, we're able to throw them at a building. And then we have a building that has 2 sides to it, a good side, which uses wildfire resistant construction, and what we're considering a typical buildings that we would see in a wildfire prone area. Exactly as we expected, that mulch on the ground there caught fire from the embers. The fire from the mulch burned up under this deck, and this whole deck was on fire. And so this fire on this deck caused flames right against the home. And then if we look there at the base of the door, there was actually the flame from this deck that burned through the bottom of the door, and inside of the house we started to see smoke and flames. And so because this deck was a combustible material attached to the building, when the embers led to the ignition of this deck, we got flames inside the building. Here we are on the wildfire resistant side of the house, where we had non-combustible siding, a 5-foot non-combustible zone, and a 6-inch cap. We had a metal gutter and multi-pane windows. And we see, in comparison to the non-wildfire resistant side, this side had the same ember exposure. If you look here in the mulch, you can actually see some of the embers that had accumulated, but because they had no susceptible fuel to ignite, they just landed there and fizzled out. And here we have ornamental vegetation that again is susceptible to the embers, but because it's more than 5 feet away from the home, it didn't have enough energy to ignite, and it never led to a flame impact on the building.
Okay, so we start with assessing our roof. It is the largest surface area. It's a giant catcher's mitt for embers. Key aspects to look at with the roof are the composition of the roof, right? Those roof materials and the character. Roofs or fire resistant roofs should be built with Class A non-combustible materials. asphalt, fiberglass shingles, clay tiles, metal roof. One thing to note here is something I get a lot. And I actually had one couple tell me that they had a beautiful asphalt shingle roof, and the wife was like, don't worry, we are saving money right now so that we can replace our asphalt shingles with metal so that we are more fire resistant. And I was like, what? It is a common misconception that asphalt is not as fire resistant as metal, or that metal is the best. Metal has its own issues. The ridges have holes at the bottom, right? That if those aren't plugged, those are great entryways for embers or bird nests, which make great tinder for those embers. So it is important that we also are armed with this information so we know we can dispel rumors. And so I was happy to let that homeowner know that they could spend that money on more fire resistant landscaping instead.
You know, it'd be
So-
nice to have a price for
Oh, yeah.
tile up there, maybe.
Right. And I don't know the difference between asphalt and metal, but I want to say metal might be a little more expensive. Of course, it varies with metal prices, but siding is a wonderful thing. We'll get to that in a little bit, but fire resistant is actually a lot cheaper. The tendency is. So back with roof, we are also looking at the character, right? If there's dormers, skylights, other changes with that, space between the roof and the roof deck, roof to wall materials, and debris accumulation. Come back for the course, for the new floor. Yeah. Joe's trying to escape. Joe Radisky's in here too. We're looking at roof to wall transition and materials and debris accumulation, right? Key to remember with debris accumulation, it is important, but material is most important. If you have a really good Class A roof, having debris on it is not as much of a threat, especially if there are no characteristics that would increase risk, like a dormer or a skylight. Also watch for overhanging branches, trees really close by that can transport fire directly to that roof or deliver lots of pine needles. Vents are a very common ember access point. Your attention really should be on if those vents, if they have them, if they're open or if they're screened. And if they are screened, you want to check the sizing of that screen. Our goal is to have a 1/8 inch non-combustible metal mesh screening covering that any open vent. This will not preclude any embers from coming in, but it will drastically reduce the size and the number of embers coming in. If you are working with a structure that is being built, or homeowners that are willing to incur the cost of changing out vents, then there are some really good flame and ember resistant options, such as like Vulcan vents. So being able to guide the homeowner to those potential options is important. Eaves are another thing we want to really focus on. Open eaves increase the risk. More fire resistant eaves would be closed in with the soffitted vents on the far outside from the siding, and definitely smaller holes. So if you have these open eaves, you want to make sure to suggest screening any openings or vents, maybe caulking the gaps or enclosing it so that it is a boxed in eave. Gutters. Debris in the gutter can ignite from embers. Yeah, we know that guy. So, it is really critical that gutters are kept clean, but also the material of gutters is really important. Vinyl is extremely vulnerable to fire and often is an ignition source for the rest of the house. It's the ember lands in a gutter, starts that vinyl on fire. The vinyl melts, drops down, and lights the siding on fire. Another recommendation could be to install non-combustible gutter covers in gutters that have a lot of debris accumulation that regularly occurs. One thing to note is as you are entering data into SAM, gutter, the cleanliness of gutters is included in a general roof cleanliness question. So we will point that out further, but just mentioning it here for those that do know SAM and our data form. Windows are really important to look at. Our previous data assessment form did not touch on windows at all, but windows are really critical, especially if you notice it's an older home and it does have single pane windows. Single panes are extremely vulnerable to fire, and it's not that radiant heat will be transferred through the window like a magnifying glass into the inside of the home. It's actually that heat will reach a temperature that will crack that pane and allow direct access for embers and fire into the home. So your suggestion would always be a double or triple paned glass. Tempered glass is even better to make it more resistant to heat. Also, look at the screens and suggest that they have metal or fiberglass screens if that is not what they have. Window boxes are not a good idea either. Siding. Replacing siding is expensive and likely not an option for most people, right? We hope to see non-combustible siding options like stucco brick, or what's really common here, fiber cement. If they don't have a non-combustible siding, so if they are the left side of the house with our wood shingle siding, then what you really want to focus on is suggesting that they have a non-combustible 0 to 5 foot perimeter around that home, right? Make sure there's no ignition source underneath that siding. You also want to make sure they have a 6-inch vertical non-combustible skirting. There should be a gap and a non-combustible foundation or skirting between the ground level and the beginning of the siding. But also peek under there if they do have that. Make sure there's no gaps or crevices where embers can sneak up. Attached structures, as we saw from the video, are really important. When you have an attached structure, as the assessor, you are going to view that as part of the home. Okay, this includes decks, balconies, patios, carports, and especially fences. Fences can act like a wick to bring flames to the house, either from another home right next door or from the surrounding property. So you want to ensure or suggest that any combustible fencing that touches that home is separated by a metal gate or something that is non-combustible. You are looking for any attached structure, you are looking to ensure that the area, the 0 to 5 feet around that, since it's viewed as part of the home, you're looking at trying to make that 0 to 5 feet around the home and the attached structure as non-combustible. So you want to suggest that it be cleared of fuel. As we move from the home, we're still in the immediate zone, but now we're going to look at the landscaping in the 0 to 5 feet around that home. Your goal in this area, or the homeowner's goal in this area, should be to make it a non-combustible zone. Non-combustible means no vegetation or wood mulch. Ideal would be rock, gravel, cement, some other hard surface. This is called hardscaping. Okay, that should be the suggestion in this area. There should not be bushes or trees. If removing a tree is impossible, then your suggestion would be to prune that tree to reduce the risk of fire from getting into the canopy. Keep that fire on the ground and not getting up into the top of that tree. Junipers are highly flammable, especially when dry, and they hide their dry inside. And so as such, they should never be planted anywhere in the immediate zone. If there is vegetation in the immediate zone, which often there is, many of us are green thumbs and love to have some of this green stuff close to our house, then just work with it, right? We want the homeowner to love where they are, but suggest maybe having low growing, non-woody or high moisture content plants there. Have them be more spaced out, make sure they're well watered, and make sure that all the dead material is removed regularly. The key when you're doing these assessments is to understand too that people don't want to live in concrete bunkers, right? Obviously, that's going to be the most fire resistant building to live in, but that's not what people want to live in. So we've got to meet people where they are and try to suggest recommendations that they might actually do, right? That will have some sort of an impact. So work with that homeowner. We have the 0 to 5 foot for a reason. Notice how the embers act here in this picture when they hit the home. Many drop directly adjacent, but some eddy back up out to 5 feet. And this is why the recommendation is for 5 feet of non-combustible space. I try heavily to intersperse multiple times in my conversations with homeowners that these distances are scientifically derived. It's based on research. It's based on analysis of areas that have had disasters happen and why these certain distance or there is justification for every distance. And so, especially for the 0 to 5, this is one that it's critical to understand why we have that 5 foot mark. Remember that small details matter. The immediate zone, most important area to treat to reduce wildfire, and it is in the little things. So pay attention to those little things. Look at the doormat. Look at the flower pots. Is there a broom leaning against the door? Check out the patio furniture and cushions, leaves or pine needles built up in the patio. Each of these items have caused homes to burn. Always also make sure that you bring publications that explain the home ignition zone in detail so that the homeowner has something to reference after you're gone and they can better digest this information. You can also refer them to mtfireinfo.org, which provides a lot of this information as well. In our next module, we'll go a little bit more in depth into these resources and which ones to bring. Okay, so now we're going to move out from our immediate zone, but first, you guys have earned it. You're going to take a break. We have a timer set for 5 minutes. Is that okay, or do we need 10 minutes? You guys tell me. Bill's voting for 10, but he really wants like 60 minutes. Are we good with 5?
That sounds awesome.
Okay, how about we do 5? If you're a little late, I'll go slow. So.
Get water.
Hi, I'm Dr. Christopher Stenger.
Oh, you
I
get
spent-
5 minutes plus this. Is an ad.
Do you know how long the realtor training takes?
Yeah,
Hour and a half.
Maybe that wrap.
hip and knee.
But we haven't done Jessamines. You're right. We haven't actually done Jessamines.
The
So
one that's like
that's Jessamines.
the blue and like the DNR
Yeah.
one.
That was Jessamines. Cause yeah, she sent that to me. Hang on. I got to remember. Cause I think she actually told me. Oh, is it not?
It's good.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jessica
Should be the
Rayson,
Did it stop?
orthopedic surgeon here in Butte, Montana with
I was trying
specialty
to
training
exit down
in
and it
foot
skipped
sample.
forward.
I chose orthopedic surgery
I was thinking we were muted.
because I get to
That doesn't
actively
matter.
help my patients.
Those are so good.
Your mic is still live.
Okay, thank you. That's what we're trying to.
That's what
Okay, I have my little 5-minute timer ran out. So we are gonna keep going. Are there any questions before I resume my monologue? Okay. Really? You're escaping now? Bill's leaving us?
No,
Oh.
just get away from the owl.
It's one of you.
All right, so we are now moving into our intermediate
Oh, yeah.
and extended zone. So remember, we're looking at the 100 or 200 feet out from the home. And our next zone is that intermediate zone, 5 to 30 feet from the home. The goal of this area is for it to be lean, clean, and green. We want to disrupt the path of fire to the structure. Our goal is decreasing that ignition potential within this area. I do strongly suggest using that lean, clean, and green terminology because it is something that's easy to remember and it will help guide people in their action plan. So when you're trying to visualize where this is, sometimes when you're out there at the house, it can be hard to determine, okay, exactly, where are we looking? Well, think of one telephone pole laying down out from the house. That's going to be your further 30-foot zone. The recommendations for tree spacing here is going to be based on the NFPA, the National Fire Protection Agency's recommendations. Now, these suggest 18 feet of spacing between our tops of trees or our crowns, but this is on a flat slope. And so recognize if your property is on a steeper slope, you're going to increase or suggest increasing that spacing, okay? You're going to recommend that the area be clear of ladder fuels, right? We want this lean and clean. So we are pruning trees 6 feet up or no more than 1/3 the height of the trees. You are suggesting that they are mowing or watering their lawns and native grasses, keeping them shorter than 4 inches. You're going to suggest that they remove all ground litter and debris. That could include raking up those pine needles, right? Doing a little prescribed burn there to keep that area clean. Ideal is suggesting paths and walkways to also help break up the fuels in this area. In this zone, deciduous trees or trees that lose their leaves in the winter are preferred because they tend to have higher moisture content in their stems and leaves. As we move out to our extended zone, this is the area 30 to 100 feet. The goal here is to reduce fire severity, right? Bring our fire that might be coming in from the crowns, bring it down to the surface where it is lower intensity and where hopefully it'll run into our intermediate zones, lean, clean, and green, and not go anywhere. To visualize this spacing in this area, picture 3 school buses end to end from the structure or one big Boeing 737. You're going to suggest minimal ground litter and debris. You're going to suggest removing small conifers and ladder fuels, right? Clear out that region. Removing dead plant and tree material. Your tree spacing is going to be slightly variable within this. In the area from 30 to 60 feet, you're going to be suggesting 12 feet between individual trees or clumps of trees. And from 60 to 100 feet, that spacing decreases to 6 feet. Remember, if you're on a slope, you're going to increase that spacing. This also is the zone for outbuildings, firewood piles, and propane tanks. So if they have a firewood pile on their front porch, you're going to recommend that they move it out to this area and hopefully not right next to a tree. Propane tanks should be at least 30 feet from any structure and should have 10 feet of vegetative clearance, non-combustible clearance around them, both vertically and horizontally. Now, the area beyond 100 feet it's not as important as we are doing an assessment on the home ignition zone, but it still has an importance on the relative fire risk for this structure. It is the least important, right, zone, but alerting the homeowner to the risk of the continuous fuels and excess ladder fuels can be really important. And a great resource to help you do this is connecting the homeowner with your local forestry resource, right? Especially if they have further questions. And if for the DNRC, we have our unit service foresters, such as Bill, who's in our room. Many of our counties have a forester or a resource advisor that will provide this service. There's often local mitigation partners like the Bitterroot RC&D, fire departments that have mitigation crews or specialists that work with this. And many counties also have mitigation crews that will help with this. And so make sure you are aware of the local resources you have and how the homeowner can access that, because these individuals can provide recommendations and assessments on both forestry health, but also wildfire risk. Other important topics that we want to make sure to cover during our home assessments. One is evacuation preparedness. I always view a home assessment as two-pronged, right? It's an assessment to help help the homeowner prepare their home for wildfire, but it also should cover homeowner preparedness for a wildfire. And of utmost importance here is evacuation preparedness. We have an incredible opportunity. We're one-on-one with a homeowner. So we definitely want to relay as much critical information as possible. So this is a great time to talk with them about, do they have evacuation routes planned out? Have they practiced them? Do they have go bags packed, a meeting place, external contacts made? Do they have a plan for their pets and livestock? Where do they know where to get their local emergency alerts? Are they signed up for them? Do they know how to monitor their local fire situation, right? Here in SWLO, we do have evacuation checklists that are specifically designed for Missoula, Mineral, and Ravalli County residents. If you don't have these, make sure to contact Ella, Olivia, or my successor to get some of these. But these are a great item to hand out. If you are outside of those areas, the University of Nevada has an awesome and very comprehensive wildfire evacuation checklist pictured here that you can easily print out and hand out as well. But make sure you are giving your homeowner some form of evacuation preparedness documentation. And our new revised form actually does have this included in the form as discussion prompts to help remind you that this is an important thing to cover. Smoke preparedness is also a really important topic that should be mentioned. Ask if they have an air filtration system. Do they have a clean air space set aside in their home? If not, do they know how to make a do-it-yourself box fan filter? Do they know where to check for air quality? Okay, we actually have a handout, which you'll see in just a little bit, that goes through this. But if you don't have either the evacuation information or the smoke preparedness handouts, send them to mtfireinfo.org. Okay, it has all of this information as well as those PDFs of those resources so that your homeowner can get further information there. Finally, after our assessment is completed, we've collected all the data, right? You have a couple options for how to relay the follow-up information to the homeowner. Ideally, all the data should be entered into our wildlife risk database, SAM, Situation Analyst Montana. This database hopefully is also shared with your local first responders, but it is not a deal breaker that the information is put in there. Many homeowners actually are uncomfortable with their information being put into a database. So if they do not want it in the database, take really good notes and just make sure you are providing the homeowner with a detailed list of the recommendations. SAM is required to generate the wildfire risk rating. So that is something they will not receive, and you want to make sure to be clear with that. But other than that, you can provide them recommendations. If you are clear to enter that data into SAM, it is going to generate a wildfire risk rating as well as reports. Currently, as I mentioned before, you must have an agency affiliation to enter data into SAM. But if that's something you're not comfortable with, or if you are a resident at this time, work it out with your local fire council or DNRC or agency partners. And if you're doing the assessment, you're taking really detailed information and working with them as they enter that data into SAM. So there are definitely options and ways around this. There are, as you're taking this data in the field, SAM does have a field app. So there is a way that you can collect the data, enter it into SAM as you are in the field, generate a risk rating and reports, and relay while you are at the assessment that risk rating to the homeowner and email them those reports right then and there. There is also an extra page in our newly revised form for recommendations. So you can fill out that form with those recommendations and give it to the homeowner on the spot. So it is possible to do everything in one visit. One caution for this is that in the past, when we've had assessors entering the data in the field, their heads tend to be buried or looking down and concentrating on the iPad instead of concentrating on the homeowner. So you be the judge, but just make sure that you are engaging that homeowner appropriately and use SAM the best way that works for you and the homeowner. The follow-up deliverables are essentially either, if you're doing the field app, you're communicating this with the individual right there, or you are sending the homeowner a follow-up email. This should include their risk rating generated by SAM, as well as the SAM risk rating and homeowner reports. SAM actually generates 3 reports, but the only 2 that you need to send them are the risk rating and the homeowner reports. And if you've never looked at those reports before, I suggest you look through them so you understand the information that you're providing to the homeowners. You also want to provide them with a written prioritized recommendations for reducing their risk. Remember, that honestly is the most important. That's their action plan. You also want to make sure you have left them with educational materials. If you forget or don't have them, you can attach them to the email or send them a link to mtfireinfo.org. Ask them also to pass the information along to their neighbors. I always say, please don't put it in file 13. When you're finished with them, pass them along. Send the homeowner that, and make sure to send that homeowner that follow-up email with the reports, recommendations, and their risk rating, ideally within 1 week of visiting them. You want to make sure that it stays salient in their mind. So we have previously used what is known as the short form for our data collection. And a positive of that form was that it aligned very well with SAM. It pretty much every question was directly related to a question in SAM The problem was that it missed many key elements. As I mentioned before, windows were not covered in there, gutters were not covered. The immediate zone was not emphasized at all. And in many spots, it was confusing and there were unclear wording or very subjective questions. So over the past year, we worked really hard at revising this form, and we've created a revised long form. Now, those of you who have been doing assessments for a while, this is not the previous long form, which we created, or which was created as a do-it-yourself assessment form for homeowners. This is different from that. This is a revised, longer data collection form for the assessors. And this is what we are suggesting all assessors use. It covers all the risk considerations that every assessor should be covering in any assessment. It has highlighted portions, which helps assessors identify which questions are collecting data directly for SAM, so they make sure not to forget to ask any of those. And it has discussion prompt points for the assessor to remember to speak with the homeowner about. One of the negatives is that it is long, but here's the thing. It is covering everything that you should be covering with the homeowner anyways. So having it in written format just helps you make sure not to forget anything. Okay. Are there any questions? That does conclude module 1. We will briefly in just a minute go over, just look through our newly revised form, but are there any questions or comments up to this point?
I have one question, just with
Okay.
that form, and we're gonna get those, like you mentioned. But how are you guys distributing this information for the new long form to all the partners that may not be in the training? I'm
Right,
just
and
I'm
that's
just
a
thinking
great-
other partners as well.
Yeah, how are we getting the form out there? Ideally, through this training. The goal is that anybody doing assessments in the state of Montana is taking this training at some point, right? Because, we can't mandate it, and we're not going to mandate it, but we're definitely going to request it because it helps all of us to speak the same language and ensure that there's consistency in both training of our assessors and information that's delivered to the assessors. But we aren't channeling the assessment form just through the training. It was attached in the calendar invite, so all of you should have a copy of it. But my successor, Olivia, Ella, and Julia will also be able to send that to you. And so it is something that honestly, the best path of dispersal is going to be you working with your partners and making sure your partners have this. The suggestion is we are doing this training in the spring. So you're getting a glimpse at what this training is going to entail other than the field session, right? Envision a longer section where we're going to actually go out and do multiple home assessments in the field. So any of your partners that are doing assessments, prompt them, push them to attend this training in the spring, where also they're going to get copies of this assessment form as well. But we're not going to hide it. So reach out if you don't have it, but also pass it along to all your partners. It was really long-winded, but did that make sense?
Yeah, I did. Yep, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah.
Kristen, we have one question in the chat. Does any of this talk to Survey 123 or Collector on the Forest Service side?
So no, and CJ may actually address this too. Not at this time, though. There has been a lot of energy put into trying to get SAM and the federal databases to work. SAM is Entera created, right? It was a program that was created in, I think 2016, 2017 to do these assessments, but it is EGP based, right? And so there's a lot of similarities and links, and it would be awesome to have this data matched up with those data sets as well. So work has been put towards it, but I don't know if the reality is something that's going to occur in the near future. CJ, if you're still there, do you have any further information?
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. For folks that get mobilized to incident management team run incidents, so most complex teams, or in some geographic areas that still use type 1 and type 2 teams, if you're handed by your resource unit or your GIS unit an iPad or some other tool to go collect in what is now called field maps, you're going to get an NRCG, excuse me, an NWCG sponsored by the National Interagency Coordination Center template of collecting data on structures. That's what we, capital W, use for on incident management teams nationwide. So Montana is very unique in that they contracted with the Entera group to build SAM. SAM is a far better product as far as I'm concerned. One thing, David, that you can do, and this is a little harder leap for a complex team or in another geographic area, type 1 or type 2, is build a survey in Survey 123 that could match this long form and then later be uploaded into SAM because the fields would fit, right? All the fields where the data is collected in an Excel spreadsheet could just be taken and downloaded, or rather uploaded into SAM. If you wanted to do that, that's a pretty tough lift. And I have not seen that done yet. So Montana is very unique in that they made this investment. Survey 123 can be used to build. Finally, and this is a much heavier lift, is for, say, type 3 teams at the local level. They can, in the state of Montana, it is their choice to, when they bring in an incident management team, to include in a delegation of authority that the unit wants the incident management team, or is delegating the responsibility to the incident management team to do their collection of data using the DNRC long form so that we can input it into SAM automatically without having to transfer data. So it can be written into a delegation of authority for an incident management team. I don't know if that's been the case in the state of Montana. It's been on my radar screen for many years, but no, there's been no, because this is so unique to the state of Montana, there's been no national effort to replace what incident management teams use for their structure assessment. That answer is very, very governmental, but I think it captures your question.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, CJ. Okay, we're going to go move on and just look at our data sheet. Does everybody see the wildfire risk assessment form on their screen? Is that popping up?
The assessment form?
See that? Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. All right. So as you notice, the yellow highlighted items are items that directly go into SAM. So you want to make sure to respond to those. But there are a number of things that aren't yellow, but are still critical. And what I really love about this form are these discussion prompts. It reminds us to speak about important things. Really critical is a liability disclaimer, right? Telling the individuals that they can do everything we recommend, but there's still a risk because we're dealing with wildfire and Mother Nature. So these prompts really help to make sure that we cover what we need to. The evacuation preparedness is in here, big section right in the middle. And our location factors, a lot of the things we're doing in our preliminary assessment, okay? Prompts also for how to address unique features such as the canyon saddle chutes, right? Those unique topographical features. So it really is designed to lead the assessor through the assessment, going from the preliminary aspects through the immediate zone to the intermediate and out. And then I'm gonna try not to give you whiplash, but I'm scrolling all the way down. Oh, and it does give you prompts to address the quirkiness of SAM, such as this one where SAM actually lumps the 0 to 30 data into one question. And so this is, while the data collection has them separated, it does prompt you that you're going to be lumping this when you enter that data into SAM. Unique in this form is that there is a signature page. This is optional. This was requested by some of our other land offices, and it's definitely up to you whether you want to request the property owner sign this or not. It is a liability statement. It also is their consent to enter their data into SAM and take a picture of the home or property. So just realize that is optional. And then it also includes this last page, which is where you can take your recommendations and jot them down so you have that written form. You're welcome to hand this form to them. You won't have the risk rating unless you're using the field app, but you also can use this form when you get back to your office and have entered the data in, scan this and send it. The other alternative is you need to just make sure that in the body of your follow-up email to the homeowner, you are including all of these components. You are letting them know their risk rating, and you are providing them those prioritized recommendations in that email. So it doesn't really matter the form that it takes, other than that information needs to be provided to the homeowner, as well as those 2 SAM generated reports. So that is our assessment form, the newly revised one, 8 pages, but it's worth it. And especially if you're newer to home assessments, I think it will definitely help make sure that you are covering all the bases and all the important information for the homeowner. Okay, so that should have been sent in your invite, but it will also be included in a follow-up email that will also have the SAM module and link to the video tutorial. So you'll get this assessment form multiple ways, and feel free to share it and provide comments if you notice any issues with it or any typos. We worked on this for a long time and probably are missing commas and stuff like that. So Anna, call me on the commas, but please provide input, definitely. Okay, we are going to move on, and hopefully you will say, yeah. Should I try it?
Yeah.
Okay,
It's in presenter view.
again, okay. All right, now how did you do it? Hang on, it's in presenter view, and I don't want you guys being bored with my notes. Julia's saving my bacon, I'm sorry. Yeah. I don't know why it keeps doing that.
You just want to make sure you're sharing,
Oh, not from the screen,
yeah,
but
so first you do this. Oh. And then,
is it working?
no.
No.
Bill's there. Maybe Bill can help.
Yeah, we're laughing.
Step on over there, Bill.
And I don't need the notes page, so I can just present as the slideshow too, because I got my notes here.
Because now it's not showing up as even an option.
One of the screw things, so, oops, I'll accidentally disconnect everything.
Okay,
You just don't hear. I'm just gonna.
I'll just go
Okay, that's right.
as a slideshow. Okay, that works. All right, we've got it.
Good job. Just had to.
Okay.
Be present.
So we're gonna quickly go through this in accelerated form, but I think we can do it. This is module 2, and this will go over homeowner engagement best practices. Ideally, we're going to cover the home assessment best practices in terms of communicating with the homeowner. We're going to discuss briefly common motivators and barriers to action, right? Because if we want to inspire action, we've got to address the best way to get action to be performed. And we're going to discuss the resources that we suggest providing to the homeowner. So a reminder again, why do we do wildfire risk assessments? What is our ultimate goal? Yay, Olivia said it. To inspire mitigation action in the home ignition zone, right? Now, in order to inspire, that means we don't want to be not inspiring, right? We don't want to be a bump in the lawn. We don't want to seem uninterested, because if we don't care, if we're rushed, if we act like it's not important, the homeowner's going to feel like, why should they care, right? So we want to definitely be a little inspiring ourselves. We also don't want to just sit there and lecture the homeowner. This is an opportunity for two-way conversation, which is something we don't get often. So make it a conversation. Come prepared to answer common questions or concerns that they may have. Ask your own questions, right? And make sure that you are providing them with resources. Make it worth their while. So our general best practices. Make sure to schedule your assessment for a minimum of an hour per home. I know me, and I schedule for an hour and a half every time. I never do it for just an hour. Know your approximate timing and schedule it for that, and be very clear with the homeowner what the expectations are. Ensure when you are calling to schedule that they understand that you are expecting them to be with you as you do this assessment, and that it is something that they need to be home for. You want to dress professionally, ideally in identity wear, so that they can see who you represent. And also, if you're doing it with a partner, it's a great opportunity to show them that it is a multi-agency effort. Make sure you show up on time and prepared. And these may seem like common sense, and they are, but that's our BMPs. During our assessment, make sure you're making eye contact from the very beginning all the way to the end, and smile. Remember, you want to be there. Be interested in their story and their property. Ask questions. Why did they request a home assessment? What are their goals for their property? If our goal is to inspire them to action, the answers to these questions are actually really critical. They help inform us and will help us tailor our recommendations to hopefully be something that the homeowner is actually willing to act on. After, as you're leaving that assessment, you want to make sure to provide them with a way to contact you, especially if they have any questions, and always thank them for their time. Be a people person, even if you're normally not, right? Fake it till you make it. And it's hard. This is something that it's hard to teach, but it is a conversation. It is a discussion, and you have a job to inspire. So do what you can. Also, be sure to read the room, right? Be really intuitive perceptive regarding your audience and homeowner. You might need to adapt to each homeowner and situation. Some homeowners want the assessment to be very formal. And they will request lots of scientific information and expect a lot of resources. Other homeowners will want it to be very informal, right? Read the room and give the homeowner what they need. When you're doing introductions, there's about 4 parts to this. You obviously are going to start by introducing yourself and your fellow assessors. You're going to identify the goals of the assessment. And in here is a great time to also ask them about their goals, why they requested this, and what they're hoping to get out of the assessment. You also want to, in this time, provide a brief overview and a liability disclaimer. Remember, your data collection form is guiding you through this as well. It has those check boxes to remind you to cover all these things. And this is the perfect time to fill out housekeeping items, which are on that first page of the form. Now, I have learned a wonderful thing this year that Ella taught me, and that is usually your housekeeping and these questions take about 20 minutes, maybe 30 minutes if it's me. But if it's July, 90 degrees out, and it's an 80-year-old homeowner, an area without any shade might not be the best place to be doing this. And so Ella was great. We had this exact instance and I was just going and Ella was like, how about we go over to this shaded porch? Would that be okay? And actually the homeowner invited us into the house because Ella then said, well, this is going to take a few more minutes. And so we just want to make sure you're comfortable. So we went in the house. And it was much better for the homeowner. So this is a great example of being perceptive, but also this is a great lesson learned for all of you out there. For this beginning time, make sure that homeowner is comfortable and that they are understanding of how much time that our housekeeping part will take. So learn from my mistakes. Oh, the poor people in my past. I don't think I've killed anybody to this point. Okay, so after our introductions, we then go on to conduct our assessment. Some things to consider, right? Especially as we are formulating our recommendations while we're doing our assessment, are the common motivators and barriers to action that our homeowners are facing. Common barriers are usually lack of information, right? They don't quite understand their wildfire risk. Numerous surveys have shown that homeowners consistently underestimate their wildfire risk when compared to actually scientifically derived wildfire risk of their home by fire professionals. So our public is extremely well educated. They're not stupid. They understand wildfire risk, but predominantly they do underestimate their risk. There's also environmental concerns, privacy concerns, right? They don't want to see their neighbors or vice versa. Aesthetics, they are living there for a reason. They liked how it looked. Time limitations, they don't have the time. It's too expensive. Insurance, they're worried if they get this assessment or do anything that it actually could increase their risk of the insurance company focusing on them or dropping their insurance coverage. Physical ability. They might be that 80-year-old homeowner that literally cannot clean their gutter. And there probably are numerous more. There are motivations though, and these are items that we want to use. Knowledge of risk, right? That's why we're there also, is to help increase this. But many of the individuals requesting assessments have personal experience. They've heard of or had their own homes damaged or impacted by wildfire. It's also common sense. So many understand there's a risk. Many are interested in aesthetics or additional benefits, bringing wildlife closer in, increasing forest health. They see their neighborhood, individuals, neighbors working on this, and they want to be a part of it. There might be cost incentives, cost share programs, right? Insurance can also be a big motivator. The threat of dropping their coverage is a big motivator currently, right? So our goal is to use these motivators to overcome barriers. So you are probably going to hear many questions. Haven't had a fire in this, or many comments. Haven't had a fire in this year or in this area since forever, so I don't have to worry about it. So, yeah. So you can address that, right? It's not a matter of if or when. That lack of information, all of those are helped by our checklists, which are in our form, right? Wildfire risk, you're addressing that with your comments there. I'm going to boogie through these because of time. Removing trees, very common environmental concern, right? Discuss with them the benefits of that. Also, you can refer them to our forestry resources, which will also help with the benefits that might happen with that. Aesthetics, they're worried about how it's going to look. That privacy, right? Just remind them, use those motivators that losing their home is probably worse than having their neighbors see a little bit more of their house. Oh, my timer says it's time now. I got 2 minutes though. Okay, so we have time limitations. There is cost and insurance, which can be both. What is really critical is we don't do home assessments for insurance companies. We do them for the homeowners. They can do whatever they choose with the information, but we do it for the homeowners. Okay. There are many others. Also, really important is to leave them with resources or a link to resources. So if you do not have any resources yourself, contact your local DNRC office and see how you can get a hold of those. There are also links, I'll provide that in just a minute, to where you can get PDFs of most of these. The one currently on your screen, the NFPA Home Ignition Zone poster, is my go-to. If you're only going to hand out one, my suggestion is that it is this poster. It has a do-it-yourself. It explains the zones very well and risk of ember ignition. This is free. You just need to make an account with NFPA, though you do have to pay for shipping. So this poster should be one. This Creating a Fire Adapted Montana is a great comprehensive read. It is very long though, and so this is for the homeowners that you know will take the time to cover it. You also want to include some sort of publication on landscaping. The Wildfire Retrofit Guide by the University of Nevada, as well as Be Ember Aware, are also key resources that would be excellent to provide your homeowners. Additionally, as we talked about before, smoke management handout by Fire Adapted Montana and an evacuation checklist, whether it's the general one or the county specific. Now, all of these resources can be found in PDF form at mtfireinfo.org. And for assessors, a great resource is fireadaptedmontana.org. That's our Fire Adapted Montana Learning Network, or FAMLN's website. There is a resources tab. Click on that and you will find a bunch more resources, excellent ones. There's ones on insurance and ranching and farm publications. So peruse that and then contact Julia or your local DNRC individual for getting a hold of some of those publications. Okay, we did it. We're 1 minute over, which is really good for me. Oh, yeah. Okay, 1 minute under. Are there any further questions? And realize that if you do have any questions that pop up after this, you are welcome to contact myself. My personal information is in one of the invite emails, but also Ella or Olivia or Julia reach out and we're happy to answer questions or send links to resources as well.
There's that question here from Carmen.
Hi, Carmen.
If you want to just ask it in the group.
Yeah, I'm curious about if you have any recommendations to give homeowners for when they physically cannot do the work themselves.
Yes. So my number one go-to is if there are any cost share programs in that area. Generally, those programs help connect a homeowner with a contractor that will actually do that work. But if it's smaller scale work, right? We're talking about small HIZ next to the home type work, or even home hardening, which most cost shares don't cover. My go-to there is high school kid, right? Ask them if they have a grandchild or a niece or nephew or a local high school kid that might be interested in earning a few bucks. It's kind of funny, but often they don't think about that, but it's the perfect place to start. And I know a lot of homeowners have actually been able to attack their small scale mitigation issues with that. So kind of start with the simplest potential option. So did that help?
Yeah, thank you.
Something else I recommend too is if they have a church,
Oh, yeah.
asking for help from their like other church members, going around the neighborhood and sharing the information that they learned from the assessment and asking for help, kind of doing like an info share for able-bodied folks in the neighborhood, and just generally crowdsourcing from their own personal network to help with those like gutter clearing or raking needles or cutting down a small tree. I think hand is raised for Chris Johnson.
Oh, go for it, CJ.
Yeah, hey, I've had some questions from, I work for the U.S. Forest Service, and there's undoubtedly some folks who on this call work for other agencies. And a common question I get is, we're not the protecting agency in some areas. Can we do home assessments or property wildfire risk assessments? And the answer is yes, of course we can. What I just recommend to folks is to find the protecting agency in your area and do your assessments with them in tow or with them along with you, to say that if the case of when we'd go to do assessments north of Missoula, where it was Missoula Rural Fire Department was the wildland fire protecting agency, we'd lead with Missoula Rural Fire Department folks. We'd go out with them, do the assessments with them, and it's just a great way to engage citizenry with the agency of protection. And the more people that can push this rock up the hill, the better. So of course you can help. We can all help each other when doing property assessments at scale. Thanks.
Yeah, great input. Thanks, CJ. And if you're not sure who has the protection in your area, I would go to your DNRC contact or Forest Service fire personnel. They will be able to help you understand that. And also in many of our areas, especially through SWLO, we actually have groups such as like our Fire in the Rut Council or the Missoula County Fire Protection Association that do the assessments together and have a process set up. And so if you're interested in being a part of that, right, search out those groups and let them know that you want to be a part of that, definitely. Or start a group yourself in that area and involve those fire management agencies because those are the best partners to have when you're doing these assessments, just as CJ mentioned. All right. Well, thank you for joining us. And I really appreciate everybody's tuning in. I can't tell if you were sleeping through the whole thing, so hopefully you got a little bit out of this, but understand that follow up will include more resources for you. You'll get the module 4 PowerPoint and a link to the video, the assessment form as well. And we can include the PowerPoints for like PDFs of the PowerPoints for the modules that we did today as well, if that is something you guys are interested in as well. But thanks again for being a part of this, and look to the spring, especially for coworkers, friends and partners that might be interested in doing assessments so that they can do this full training. But as well for you, even if you've done assessments for many, many years, we strongly suggest that everybody attend our module 3 in the spring, and go over the field session on how to do assessments, because you may learn some tips or tricks. You know, I've learned a lot every time I've trained someone, they end up training me. So, you know, but it also has been a pleasure to work with many of you that are on here. And so I wish you well in your future endeavors. And I hope that we can go out and save some more homes. And so thanks for letting me be a part of your journey in doing that. So take care, everyone, and thanks for joining.
So